Good afternoon, everyone. Bienvenue. Welcome to today's webinar. It is called Outsmarting the Algorithm, How AI is Rewriting Executive Search and What You Can Do About It with Concordia grad Christal Agostino. If you've been looking to change jobs and wondering how AI is affecting your application, particularly on LinkedIn, this webinar is for you. My name is Sylvia Otvas, and I am responsible for the Alumni Women Who Lead program, and I'm happy to see so many of you registering for this webinar today. Let's start off with a quick sound check. Please look at the bottom center of your screen. The icon titled chat is the chat box. If you can please click it and let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm going to put this up so I can see. Yes, wonderful, wonderful. While we meet today on a virtual platform, it is customary to begin our events with a territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Concordia's campuses are located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganyo-Gehaga Nation is recognized as the custodian and of the lands and waters on and near where Concordia is today. Montreal, or Jojage, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Pour votre information, nous allons enregistrer la session. This session will be recorded and will be shared in an upcoming email. If you happen to experience any technical issues, feel free to drop a message in the chat, and my colleague Erin and I will do our best to assist you. Please note that there will be a Q&A period at the end of the discussion, so please use the chat to ask your questions. I now have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, Concordia graduate Christal Agostino. Christal graduated from JMSB in 2008 and is the founder of BOA, the first talent representation and media house for executive women. She is a leading expert on AI-era executive positioning, strategic visibility, and career infrastructure for senior women leaders. She has worked as a marketing executive for many well-established brands like Air Canada, Fairmont Hotels, Mercedes-Benz, Bombardier, and L'Oréal Luxe. Christal has been named a Cannes Lions Creative Academy Top 30 Under 30 marketer and has been featured in many renowned publications. So I'd like to welcome Christal. Welcome to this webinar, and I'm going to pass the mic off to you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. This is going to be fun. I'm just going to share my screen right now. Hopefully this is working for everyone. So thank you for that wonderful intro. And yes, I am a JMSB, John Molson, Concordia alum in marketing, BCom in marketing, and had some of my first marketing roles through the co-op program and all that. So it was always great. And yes, my career has been focused on marketing, specifically luxury brand management and content strategy. And I've worked for both the corporate side at companies like Fairmont Hotels at their head office, as well as on the agency side where we ran brand strategy and content strategy for many luxury brands, such as some of the names that were mentioned, Mercedes, Air Canada. Most recently was the publisher of Air Canada enRoute in that role. So really understanding luxury brand strategy. I've created brands from scratch from the luxury side, getting underneath the psychology of luxury brand strategy. And then of course, all my work in content strategy is where I've brought myself today in terms of creating an agency for executives. Because, you know, celebrities, pro athletes, they're talented and they work hard and they become household names, but with a whole team of experts around them, managers, publicists, agents, and so many more. And so I'm trying to create that whole collection of expertise, but for executives and for people in the workforce and not necessarily in Hollywood. So really tapping into the luxury brand strategy and content strategy. And that's kind of what got me here today with this presentation and webinar. I started digging, across the experts that I work with for our clients, and really from my own background, understanding now what this new digital landscape looks like for anyone's kind of personal brand or executive brand. And more specifically, when you're looking for a job or role or a board position or more media visibility. Today's digital landscape truly is the AI era in a sense. So it's less about personal brand that we're used to, and it's still valid, you know, interaction with your reputation says for you amongst your communities and your connections. But now we have to add a new layer that's really about creating a system, and the way I position it is it's reputation architecture online, and it's really about creating a constellation of signals that AI and different AI, there's different, you know, tiers of that, and I'll go into that, so that the tools that are leveraging AI in one shape or form can really first of all, discover you, understand who you are, and then serve you up depending on, again, what you're trying to achieve, whether it's media visibility, a new job, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the pre-intro as to why I'm here and what led me to be doing this talk, and really understanding why it's important today. And I think there's been a real shift over the last few months, especially over the last year, about how things are changing for job search specifically. So we'll get into it this way. So what to expect today, we're going to go into two different things. We're going to go into the transparency of it all, so you understand what's at play online and how things work. I've done a lot of digging. I jokingly say, like, I did all the work that nobody wants to do. I dove into the LinkedIn engineering papers, and there's an engineering blog. I didn't even know there was a LinkedIn engineering blog, but I read through it all. So I really did all the digging. I looked through a lot of their sales materials for their recruitment tools and their hiring solutions tools, and put together kind of a transparency format for you all to understand how it's working, and also some hypotheses that I've pulled together based on what I've read in all those documented places online that LinkedIn has published. And then finally, we'll dive into kind of leveraging my luxury brand strategy background, and I'll put a few key strategic guideposts for all of you to then be able to use that and apply that for yourselves. So before we begin, because we are talking about AI, I'm very well aware that there's something that needs to be discussed, because there's a lot of plagiarism, there's a lot of theft out there when it comes to LLMs, which is large language models. So like the ChatGPTs, the Claudes of the world, whatever you put out in terms of IP on the internet, if it's readable by these LLMs, there's a trade-off, right, of visibility, but also the ability for the LLM to take your IP, package it, and provide it to somebody else. So that's something to keep in mind throughout this whole process. And especially when it comes to IP, keep in mind that make sure that what you put out there is your IP and not your company's private IP and all of that. That's very important to be navigating as we go through some of our recommendations. And then finally, this is not a silver bullet. This is not, you know, we looked at some of the questions that have been coming in already with the many registrants for today. A lot of questions around, you know, job search more broadly. And I think it's a bigger conversation in general. What we're really focusing on here today is how AI plays a part in your job search. But again, networking in person, joining communities, putting in the time elsewhere than just online is still very important. And then finally, what we're going to share here today, it's not a one and done thing. AI is constantly evolving in the same way SEO in the past, the rules would change regularly and there's always be updates. Expect the same with AI, but I think there's some key main knowledge points that will remain constant. But your reputation is not like, let's spend a day, do all the work, and that's it. I do think it's a regular habit that you should be thinking of as you evolve yourself as a, you know, employee or expert in your field, and also to keep that recency effect and freshness. And I'll explain why later. So again, this is more about a new habit, a new way of thinking about your digital footprint, and less about an overwhelming full day affair. Okay, So I'm going to start kind of broader, and then we'll really spend the bulk of our time about LinkedIn, specifically because it's where a lot of job search is happening. I know it's depends on industries, but in general, it's the kind of the monopoly. And then the other piece to that is AI is getting commoditized, and a lot of the technology that you'll find happening on LinkedIn, the Indeeds of the world have their own version of it. So a lot of the same theories can apply across both LinkedIn and Indeed. So it's very LinkedIn focused because, again, the bulk of profiles and personas are on LinkedIn, but think about this broadly as well in general for other platforms. So first, whether you're looking for a role, whether you're looking for new opportunities, whether you're just concerned about what the digital world says about you and your persona, it's good to understand where AI sits across all of this. So there's AI technology and tools within search engines. I don't know if all of you have noticed. And again, I'm going to be explaining all of this AI stuff in a very middle ground kind of way. I know some people watching will know way, way, way more than me, and some a little bit less. So please bear with me. But in general, the layman's broad terms of all of this is, you've probably noticed Google overviews. When you type in some search onto Google, it's not just websites that are being served up. There is kind of a new, in marketing, we call it above the fold, a new part of Google that's taking up a lot of the really important real estate when you search, where it's providing you the answer you're looking for already, or whatever the query is. So AI is involved in that. So what it's, we'll go into that later, but it starts there. So even if your job search is happening elsewhere, if there is a human somewhere in your candidate experience that's Google's you after, know that AI also plays a point in the Google part, the search part. LLMs, again, I mentioned the Claudes, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis. There's AI involved there when there's queries and questions being asked in that type of the space. There's enterprise AI. A lot of people working in large corporations have a lot of HR, candidate knowledge, skills, AI technology, kind of combing through all your internal documents and performance reviews. Like, of course, every company is different with their rules, but know that AI plays a place there. ATS systems, I think that's been the oldest of the technology that we've started seeing recently. Of, we started keyword stuffing our resumes because of that tool that the job poster would be using. They'd be kind of scanning your resumes for certain keywords. So that's kind of what we're most used to. And now where we're moving into, there's heavy AI being layered into tools like LinkedIn and executive board search tools. The goal is really to support the recruiter or the hiring manager, to make their jobs easier, faster, so they don't have to search a broad set of candidates that are not a match. And so the goal is really to help recruitment. It's a positive vision and a positive goal at the outset of it, but just it's important to understand how AI works from that position. Okay, LLMs in general. So this is important because there's bits of LLM technology across all of these AI pieces. It crawls. So whatever is available to them and their world, it will crawl through. That's why they call it large language models. They crawl through a large volume of content. And so it's important for you, especially if you're building your persona for what Google responds about you or for what ChatGPT says about you. It's important to understand there's some pieces of content that these LLMs can read or parse easily. And those are things that are very well structured in the metadata and all of that. And there are some pieces of content that it has it cannot crawl or cannot read. So, TikToks and things like that. So as we're speaking now, and as we should, there's more and more things becoming crawlable. A few months ago, Instagram was kind of a closed walled garden of content. Now they've opened it up. So if you're part of a group of some sort and you're trying to get some visibility, and they post a post, not stories, about you, now that is actually food for the LLMs. So it's important to understand what content is crawlable and what isn't crawlable. And then because there's such a huge volume of content out there, and oftentimes conflicting information, there might be people with the same name showing up. So this technology is trying to understand, is this the same person? Is this a real piece of information? Is it trustworthy? The trust is really key here because of the volume that's out there. So authority weighting is very important for LLMs. So there's different things like big media outlets, educational institutions. Those are really high authority weighted entities. So information found there and information that's clearer or more recent or updated will outweigh other pieces of content. And then, as I said, because there's lots of confusion out there, corroboration across sources is really important. So for how this matters for you, I think it's important to understand we're all we have multifaceted personas. We are very different people to different groups of people. If we have conflicting information on the internet, that could pose a problem for you. So if some pieces speak to you as a science expert and some pieces speak to you as something else in the arts, perhaps, that could be confusion for the way you are parsed and where the information is extracted. So it's important for you to connect the dots. I don't know if I said this before, but I like it. I call it like a constellation of signals that are out there. And these LLM tools or AI tools are trying to connect the dots to really paint a picture about you. So it's your job to make sure that the right signals are out there, that they're least conflicting, or if there is conflict, that you've connected them of saying, yes, this is me, this is the same person, I'm just multi-talented or whatever. But that is something to be thinking about whenever we can create those entities out there. And then packaging and presenting, from a brand marketer perspective, the scariest part for me is that these AI systems are packaging us and presenting us to an audience. So basically creating our brand to that audience. And I think on LinkedIn is especially true, is that it is forming a brand about you and a perception about you, whether you like it or not. And that's the part that we're really here to talk about, of like, how do we make sure that it's synthesizing the right information and it's creating a narrative that we really want the world to be hearing. So the evolution of recruitment, I'll go through this quickly. I think the reason we're where we are today and all these AI tools are rolling out is that there's been a little bit of a tipping point. In building my business, because I'm a marketer and really wanted to get under the skin of HR and hiring, I've been going to a lot of HR conferences, speaking to recruiters, really trying to get into their heads and understand their worlds. And what I've been hearing is that most recently is that, in the last couple of years, of course, there was keyword stuffing and all of that. And it was kind of like they'd post a job and they'd get 300-400 applicants. And they're like, oh, that's a lot to go through. They'd have their ATS systems. They'd, have their own tricks of the trade, how they'd parse through all these people, quickly scan, have a coordinator do some of that work. And that was kind of the lay of the land pre-2025 or even and 2024. Now where we're at is that both candidates and job applicants are gaming the system, whichever way you want to call it, in terms of stuffing their resumes with keywords and all of that, which is not wrong, but it's basically they figured out, well, if I can't get through without these right keywords, I'm going to add these keywords. There's that layer, but there's now another layer of candidates using AI to mass apply, because there's tools out there for that. So what I've been hearing now from recruiters, depending on the job, where they used to get 400 applicants, they're now getting 4,000 or 10,000 applicants. And not only that, most of those applicants have been manipulated to look amazing. So it's even harder to now figure out what that short list of candidates look like. The response to that is what LinkedIn, and I'm sure a lot of the competitors are also doing, is providing AI tools for recruiters to parse through that volume of applicants that they're now seeing. And so LinkedIn has been testing this out since last year, 2024, but they rolled it out globally very recently, as of September of this year, globally to all English language job searches. So it's called the Hiring Assistant. It's one of their tools of their many recruitment solutions. And this is basically what I'm going to speak to you about today. Not that every single recruiter is using that or hiring manager is using that today, but it's the technology that's basically our future reality. And more people will be using that over the next little while. So where AI is now part of, I won't go into details, the scoping, the discovery, the vetting, the packaging, the interview portion. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced AI layers to your interview experiences, and now even all the way to the job offer portion. So there's AI part of the entire process. And to give you a sense about the numbers here, this is probably 2 years old at this point because there was no numbers for last year that I could find, but LinkedIn has made $1 billion USD on user subscriptions, but $7 billion on recruiter solutions. So that's just, when you're logging into LinkedIn and you're looking at why the algorithms, the interfaces, everything, what is it truly based on or geared towards? And I think the numbers really speak for themselves as to how things are being used. Okay, so now we dive into LinkedIn. Across all their documentation, you probably now will notice it after I mention it, or you've seen this already. They really speak to their economic graph. This is a proprietary LinkedIn economic graph, is the foundation for everything. So they have millions and millions of users, and they have years and years of data that they've really understood what schools, what knowledge, what skills, companies, how things move. And so they oftentimes put out economic outlook, news items and things like that, or overviews. But really what they understand is when it comes to recruitment, because of this volume of data, they understand, well, people with this job or these skills often then moved on to these roles and these roles and these roles. So they really understand which ones stayed in the role for a long time, which ones did not. They're starting to understand what works for jobs, what doesn't work, and all of that. So that's where they're forming, it's kind of the pool of information that their AI agents are using as the basis of data. I could probably give an entire other webinar about the inherent bias that's involved in that, because this is historical data, and historically power and leadership have been in very uneven hands. And so unfortunately their economic graph is good because of the volume that it has to work with, but it also has its limitations in terms of bias. So that's something that worries me, and it's part of the bias in general with AI especially, but bias in general is part of the mission of why I'm even building my company, BOA. But it's something to keep in mind here as well. The second layer to LinkedIn, this is the boring stuff. I'll get into all the tips very soon, but it's just to understand. So this economic graph, from that, they've extracted a skills graph. And this really jumped out for me in all my research and interviews and discussions, because my personal background in resumes or job applications is I was always really about like titles, accomplishments, results, numbers. That's really how I kind of stuffed my resumes or my persona. But really, there's so much documentation that LinkedIn puts out there that they're obsessed with skills. And so just this alone, and they have, at the time of this is their image. They had 39,000 skills, but the number was up from that. So they're just constantly collecting skills and really understanding what's the skill, what's the parent skill to the child skill, and really connecting the dots as to somebody with this skill most probably has that skill. And also, if you're good at this skill, you're probably good at that. So that they're really creating a graph of like what jobs require what skills and all of that. And that's formed the basis as to why their AI team is so helpful to recruiters. So now let's talk about hiring assistants specifically. There's lots of recruitment tools on LinkedIn, but hiring assistant is their shiniest, newest technology that from everything I've heard and from everything that I've seen in terms of trends, this is really where things are moving. So it's actually a team of AI agents with one, this is their words, not mine, one super agent in charge of it. So each of the AI agents has different tasks. This is not how it's divided, but in general, the types of work that these team of agents do is the recruiter or the hiring. I'm going to say recruiter, but it could be a hiring manager, whoever's in that HR position looking for candidates, will go into a chat box that kind of looks like a ChatGPT or Claude, and without even a job description, definitely without a job posting. So that is a kind of a red flag, a flashing light for me of like, okay, well, this tool now, in the same way executive search, not all those roles were posted in the past. Well, now this is kind of becoming a broader thing where you can span hundreds and thousands of profiles without ever posting a role. So now the transparency is being removed for us, and it's getting a little murkier from an application candidate side of things. So the hiring manager or recruiter can type into the hiring assistant what they're looking for. And it could be as specific or broad or, garbled as depending on the person. They could have a job description put that in. The first task at hand for this team of agents is to really scope this out properly. So the good news is that it is using the economic graph of saying, hey, for this role, we've seen that these are the skills and these are the types of candidates that speak to this role the best. Here's a more fleshed out job description, or here's what from our economic graph we think are the skills that you would require, and then it will temperature check with the recruiter or hiring manager. So that's great. Can get a lot from that. Then what it will do, and I recently taught this webinar in a live workshop to a room full of people. It was not colleagues. They were, people doing their MBAs and masters in international business. And I said, who in the room applied for a job this year? Lots of hands went up. And then I said, who applied this month? Some hands went down. Who applied this week? A few more hands went down. Who applied today? One hand went up. And then I said, who has a LinkedIn profile? And then all the hands went right back up. Well, actually, that means all of you in this room and all of us here today, our profiles are unofficially applying for jobs for us every single day, maybe hundreds of times a day, depending on what your profile is. Because what this hiring assistant is doing is now going out and searching all LinkedIn profiles to find the profiles that might fit for that specific job. What that means, and again, why tying this back to why I'm building my business BOA, is that a lot of people put a lot of time into their resumes that they apply for a job, or the more senior you get and the higher you climb that ladder, the less time you have to update your resume, your LinkedIn profile, or you think I can't be bothered for that. Like recruiters will find me, and they a lot of senior people that I work with barely have an updated title and company, probably title, but that's about it. Very, very few of them have very robust profiles. But this is the big sales tool. This is your window of your shop, in a sense, that these AI agents are parsing through and combing through to see if you fit. Now, whether you're looking for a job or not, the AI agent team is looking through your profile, depending on whoever's looking on the other side, very regularly, whether it's for a board role, an actual executive role, any type of role. Maybe it's an investor role, an advisor role. Like your profile is applying for you. It is creating your brand to the world, whether you put work into it or not. The next piece of this team does is it's vetting you. It is saying, okay, very skills focused. Again, a good way to rethink your profile. Like, I don't even know if I put that many skills in there. When I looked at an example of as when I was publisher of enRoute, and I look at my profile, I think, I didn't even put all the skills. I just put the achievements, the awards, this, that. So really thinking about it from a lens of skills will be important for you. So vetting it and then packaging it. You'll see I think I have it here. this is an example of what it looks like on the hiring assistant side. Is on one side here, you could see that it's saying David is a top candidate. So it's vetting you, it's discovering David, it's putting the qualifications matching against what this hiring manager looked for, and also packaging it. So there was another screenshot I didn't include here where it has a list of different candidates with a kind of a one-liner of AI packaging you of like why Christal is a fit for this and why the next person is a bit fit for this. And so it is creating a narrative for you. And unbeknownst to us, this is all happening without us even having applied for a role. So the good news is a lot of this feels like even myself, as I go through with all this, it feels like, oh, well, it feels like we don't have any more power now. We don't even have visibility into what jobs are being posted potentially. I think that's a potential because a lot of companies do have rules about how they need to hire. But a lot of it feels like, okay, well, this is all out of my hands now. But no. So I think based on all my research, I have some levers that we can have control over. So I've organized it into skills, engagement, and network structure. So skills, as I said, very important. Listing your skills are key. Your headline should not be your title on your LinkedIn profile. Your title is elsewhere. You can maybe include it, especially if it's a wow factor title, but your headline should be your elevator pitch. It should be 2-3 phrases of skills of why you're an amazing candidate. Endorsed and verified skills are very important to the AI team because again, it's trying to find trustworthiness. Can we rely on what we're reading here? So endorsements from other people are more trustworthy proof points because it's not just you saying it, it is a third party saying it. And verified skills, depending on your profile and what world you play in, there are ways to get verified skills via LinkedIn's learning world. So you can get actual accreditations where you've passed tests and done things that it gets verified that you have this skill. Highly recommend that. It's great to learn always, but this is also a great proof point for the AI team to be looking at you and judging whether you have skills or not. The last piece here that I love the most is that, this feels, overwhelming that or like negative, all of it. But the positive here is that because of the economic graph and the vast amount of knowledge that this AI agent has access to, if you haven't specifically mentioned a skill that it is looking for, but you've mentioned kind of the child or sister skills around it, it is very good at inferring skills. So if you haven't mentioned it, but you have 3 other skills that most other profiles, if they have these 3, they always have the 4th, or it's very easy for them to learn that 4th, then it will still put you as a plus. It will be a positive because it's inferring skills. So, when you think of performance marketing, there's lots of skills below that. So it can maybe, if you don't name all those skills below it, it's better to name, but if you don't, it can infer. So that's an important piece to look at. The other element here I'd like to mention is that they often mention that they are looking at everything except your private messages. So posts, potentially comments, definitely articles, the IP and content that you are putting out there are things that this AI team will scan over to decide whether you are a fit for that specific opportunity or not. Engagement signals. Okay, this is more in my hypotheses area. Nowhere do they explicitly say how they rank candidates. But I've, spoken to many recruiters, and it's their thinking as well, based on what they've seen in the results that are being shown to them. But also in the sales materials that LinkedIn provides recruiters on, like, spend money here with this hiring assistant, they are promising incredible stats. And as a marketer, I know if you're promising incredible results, it's because there's something pretty robust underneath it of how you're able to promise that. So it's promising recruiters, when they use hiring assistant, to get 69% higher response rate of in-mails. So 69% is really high to me. And so that kind of got me, my little detective spidey sense going of like, well, how are they promising that, or how are they showcasing that? Of course, they can help with how the person writes an in-mail to that candidate, of course. But I do think also, based on some of the hunches that these recruiters have been telling me about, that there is something about profiles that are more heavy LinkedIn users showing responsiveness, especially those who regularly respond to in-mails very quickly. So please, my biggest advice these days, if you get in-mails from recruiters, even though it's completely out of left field, what are you talking about giving me a manager offer when I'm a VP? Like, please just respond. Say thank you, no thank you, but the response is the signal we're trying to send this AI team of responsiveness, especially to in-mails. In-mails are like gold to recruiters, because if you don't respond to their in-mail, they get docked a point. It's a whole other webinar I can tell you about, but it's very interesting. Also, in the FAQ pages of all the recruiter tools, there's a lot of hints that point to responsiveness being something that they very much pay attention to within the algorithm of the AI team. And then interest is really important as well. Showing signs of interest, like liking a company page. There's certain tabs even of engage. There's documentation of saying that somebody who's engaged with the life tab, I didn't even know there was a life tab on a company page on LinkedIn, is somebody who's, I forget the number, 1.5 times more higher likelihood of them accepting a job with you. So this is all things that LinkedIn is monitoring. So for me, my hypothesis is that they're monitoring this and explaining this to recruiters in documentation, that it must live somewhere in the way the AI agent team works. So showing, especially if you have a very narrow view of what you want as a job, showing interest and engagement in those companies, in the content that those companies post, cannot do you any harm, I promise. And finally, network structure. Social proximity does come up quite often in LinkedIn documentation. What groups you're part of? Are you you and the recruiter from the same alumni schools or similar groups? And location also plays a part. So if you're looking to move somewhere or looking in an industry that's very heavily dense, density-wise in a specific location, I'm not saying to be negative, like to trick the system, but putting yourself in that location on LinkedIn might, again, hypotheses, but it is a one of the many toggles and ways that recruiters create their pools of candidates that they reach out to. So I'm going to fly through all this. I have, this is a short webinar. I usually take a couple hours for this type of workshop, but I do have at the end of here a place where you can click on and purchase our kind of download bundle. And for today, I've given a discount to those who were committed to this and committed time to today's webinar. So please use the QR code if you really want to get deeper and have more detail around everything I'm talking about today. There's a very large bundle that you can dive into, or email me. We can chat more. There's lots of options, because I know I'm flying through this. But let me give you, just in a few minutes, some luxury brand strategy advice on how to take that knowledge of the way AI works, especially on LinkedIn, and kind of now come to your blank page or to your profile and say, oh gosh, now what do I do? So for any luxury brand, but especially for you, the most important luxury brand you'll have to ever worry about is your narrative needs to be audience driven. An expert of mine that I work with at BOA always says, your story is about you, but it's not for you. And that's Stefania Varali. She's brilliant, but that's a key thing that we use in luxury brand management. Your story, of course, is about you. Your profile is about you, but it needs to speak to the audience. The narrative needs to be created for the audience. In a job search place, the way to start is look at the job descriptions that you're interested in and start combing through all of them to understand the words, the keywords, the language that's being used by this world you're trying to get into. If you've been in that world, you probably know it, but if you're pivoting or you're trying to grow, using those words are really important. So look at job descriptions, look at like the bright shining star people who you're like, oh, I'd love to be him or her, and look at the type of words that they use in their profile. Hopefully they've filled their profile up, and really optimize for that. And then make sure, again, we're not keyword stuffing, but make sure that you're combing through your skills and really highlighting those properly on your profile. Differentiated positioning is key because now AI is combing through a volume of content. Really standing out is important, and it's really hard to do a lot of the time for any brand out there. When it comes to you as your own personal brand, the way I like to divide it with our clients is you got receipts and you have POVs. Your receipts are your proof points of what you've done, what you've achieved, and all that. And those, the higher you climb in a career, the more you have. Although I would argue that the more you forget. So please write it down, because many of my clients and friends forget all their achievements until they sit down and actually spend time thinking about it. So write that stuff down. Keep a folder of receipts of emails or things you've accomplished, and regularly go through those to pull out some great skills. The other piece are point of views, your POVs. I'm looking at the time. I have a few minutes left. I'm almost done. But your POVs, I think, are really important to differentiate you, because your opinion on a specific skill or a specific part of your world will hopefully be very individualistic to you and will be able to differentiate you from somebody else that's applying, or whether you know it or not, whether you're both applying for a specific opportunity. And for somebody who maybe lacks proof points in the receipts because they're earlier in their career, or they're pivoting to a new industry or trying something different, they might be lacking on the receipt side of things. But what I love about this new hiring assistant agent team is that they're combing through everything. They're combing through articles that you've posted, posts that you've posted. I think it's not proven, but definitely, just based on what I've looked at, probably even the comments you're publicly posting. Because they only say the only thing we do not look at are your private DMs on LinkedIn. So that's a huge opportunity to be able to demonstrate to the AI team that you do have certain skills, or you have certain points of view, and you've researched, you have an interest in it, you have an expertise in a way, even though your history might not show it. Maybe publish some articles and put some posts out there and really try to get those skills and those right keywords out there, and to differentiate you. And then finally, consistency and credibility. I mentioned just before, whether it's through ChatGPT or Google, pattern recognition, credibility, all of high authority things are so important to AI in general because of the volume of content it's going through. So making sure you're consistent and you're, putting some effort and strategy behind the skills, because again, they're obsessed with skills. So pick the top 3 or 5 skills you really want to put forward in the world to get you to that next executive role or a board role, whatever that might be. Really put that out there consistently and credibly. So, your featured section on your profile where you can link to external things. Now, the caveat there is I don't think the AI team can jump externally outside of the LinkedIn ecosystem. But if you are quoted in the Globe and Mail or quoted in Montreal Gazette or La Presse, putting that there on your profile is with a high authority URL, is a ding of high authority to the AI team. The importance here, though, is make sure the keywords and skills that you're so proud of being mentioned in that article, that you include it in the description, in the LinkedIn fields, and in the metadata part of LinkedIn. So it's basically the check mark of the .com, .ca, not sure. Okay, great, ding, high authority. And boom, here are the keywords that we're supposed to connect the dots with to prove these skills. So credibility is going to be important. So those verified skills, those endorsed skills, unfortunately, get uncomfortable and ask colleagues to endorse you, because it will be important. Okay, so that's it. How did I do, Sylvia? All right, 12:44. But basically what we chatted about today was really about what the world looks like, how the AI tools are really working in today's kind of landscape. And hopefully you can take these luxury brand strategy approaches to really start thinking through how you're going to apply this. And as I mentioned, it's not a silver bullet. You still have to go out there and go in person, because those weak ties that LinkedIn loves, that second degree relationships and all of that, it's still very important on LinkedIn and also in life. So go out to those conferences, go out to those networking events. Don't overwhelm yourself, but try to make a couple contacts, because that is truly a lot of the game in job search. And then connect with them on LinkedIn, because now you're connected to a whole other pool of hiring managers that now you have people in common. So it's, again, this LinkedIn strategy is not the only thing you should do, and it's more of a habit to regularly update your profile. It shows recency and relevancy to the algorithms as well. And finally, connect with me. I love talking, clearly, as you can probably see, but head to meetboa.com or follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok. And then if you take your phone to the QR code right here, it brings you to the document I mentioned. So I have a download bundle that I've created and discounted for everybody here today. It goes into everything I just sped through in more detail. It has an exercise for you to go through with some questions and kind of like a workshop experience for you to go through. And then there's a grid that I use with our clients as well to really put the POVs, their receipts all together and really organize it so that they at least have a plan and they're not posting about some silly thing like the silly posts we see on LinkedIn sometimes. So there's some real strategy, and the time you put into your post on LinkedIn is actually working for you. So thank you, Sylvia. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Now we
Well, thank you, Christal. My gosh, it seems exciting and overwhelming at the same time. You know, it's also new, and I've got lots of questions. And I'm just going to jump right in because while we're on this, we're talking about LinkedIn, but as you mentioned at the beginning, the same processes if I'm not on LinkedIn. Someone's saying, should I be on LinkedIn? I'm not on there. Should I be, no matter what I do? What's your take on that?
No matter what I do is a very broad comment.
Well, does everybody need a LinkedIn profile?
My thing would be yes, because now how active you need to be and how obsessed with a super user is very different. But having a foundation of your profile on LinkedIn, if you're comfortable, again, there's a trade-off of privacy, of IP that we're putting out there, especially if you're putting articles and posting. So be very aware of your trade-off. That is a personal decision. There's some people, one of the courses I taught, there was somebody saying, well, I'm related to somebody very famous, so I'm actually worried about what I put out there because it could be tied. That's a very specific situation. So of course it's specific to you. In general, I would say yes, because if you have a at least public profile to a certain degree, even if your job hunting is not happening on LinkedIn's profiles, the way they are structured, are very easy for the other LLM tools out there to be parsing through and like combing.
So they are going in and seeing what's on LinkedIn, like other social media.
Yeah, and I think,
Okay.
in general, Claude or ChatGPT, it could be reading your articles that you publish on LinkedIn. So it's kind of like a free way to be creating that constellation of pings out there, even if you're a ballerina.
Yeah,
Like
an artist or
ballerina, I
yes.
don't need to be on LinkedIn. But if you're talking about your training, your expertise, you're posting on LinkedIn, you don't really care about LinkedIn. However, when a journalist might be looking for you, saying who's the top so and so in Canada, that article might show up. So there's reasons to do it. Your name is not happening on LinkedIn.
Now, what weighs more? If I have a Substack is like where I can write my blog and write articles for myself under the Substack portfolio. What weighs more then? Should I be copying them to LinkedIn? Should I be writing them in LinkedIn? Should I be doing half-half?
Yeah. So authority is hard to, like, there's no Bible out there that they say, well, AI prefers Substack over Instagram.
Yeah, Facebook link. Yeah,
I wish, but no,
right.
I do think it's all important.
Okay.
Engagement authority, if there's a lot of comments or a lot of traffic, or maybe not traffic, but it feels like there's more volume happening somewhere. So if I have a Substack, which we're all trying to start a Substack, I have one viewer. So yes, it's still worth it because Substacks, the way it's organized, the structure of a Substack, the metadata behind it is like gold to LLMs. So yes, do that. And it probably ranks higher than if you were to put a blog post on your personal website, because your personal website doesn't have the volume of people on Substack, right? But not to say you shouldn't put a blog on your post on your personal website, because again, we're trying to create a constellation. Constellations, you're trying to connect them all. So my best advice would be do as much as you can, not copy paste, because then it confuses the canonicals, and that's a whole other world. But not to copy paste, but to definitely have, here's my full article is on Substack. Then you should do, if you can, if you have the time, the bandwidth, of course, do an article on LinkedIn that speaks to your Substack. Maybe it's a point of view, there's like an excerpt, that kind of thing. It points to it link-wise, or perhaps it sits on your blog, or maybe your blog also points to your Substack. So at least you're connecting things so AI can really see this is the same person, they're talking about it.
Right.
The best would be an external media outlet that has a lot of traffic and is a trusted kind of pillar of society in that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you mentioned before, say we've been mentioned in La Presse or the Gazette, to take that link, are we creating a post in LinkedIn to show, like, we're posting and saying, hey, I was just mentioned. Is that where you were talking about putting that link, creating a post?
All of it. All of it.
All of it.
I would create an article or
a post.
But what I really was saying is, number one place to put it, if you on your profile, there's a featured.
Okay.
And that is, you can link to, if you're a graphic designer, you can link to your portfolio of work.
Yes.
You can link to an award
articles.
That you won, an article.
Perfect. So in the featured section.
Anything. But the important part for AI on LinkedIn specifically is to not just be like, article about me, then a link, and you post it, to the human, it's great because they'll click on it, they'll read it, all that. But to AI, they go, article about what? About what? Really putting the right words and descriptors into the LinkedIn fields and the metadata. Even I'm getting like very, not conspiracy, but like I'm getting deep here. But like if you're attaching an image, maybe put the keywords in the name of the image as well. Like there's so many places to be thinking about what can AI read here, and it's in the ecosystem of LinkedIn, and just doing my best.
Mm-hmm. Someone writes, does AI see posts that we've erased?
That's a great question.
Does it stay forever and ever?
Yeah, I've looked into that. Of course, they don't mention it officially. I will say though, in their commentary or things that they do publish, they constantly say things that you make public. So I would assume that if you've deleted things on LinkedIn, I'm talking about the LinkedIn hiring assistant AI. I'm not talking about other tools that employers could potentially be using that pulls up old cached content about you. For the AI hiring assistant, I do think it's really about currency and publicly posted things.
Thank you. Leslie, the first question we got, I'd be curious to hear any suggestions you have for the executives in overcoming the inherent bias that you mentioned at the beginning, while we are waiting patiently for LI and other LLMs to acknowledge and adjust the issue at the root.
Yes.
Good question, Leslie.
This is why I started this company. I think you're right. There's a ton of bias that we can talk about for hours. So for a great example is, if this executive search is looking for a C-suite executive. And so AI has historical data to say the best, most successful C-suite, whatever it is, has had these qualities, has used these terms and these words, has been to this school, have been part of these groups, post about these type of things. So there's bias right there, because if you're born into privilege and when all those shapes and forms that comes in, then you most likely have certain types of affiliations or groups. So yes, there's bias there. What concerns me especially, there was a report that came out where it's like highest used words that men use that women don't know about, and then the words that women use that men don't know about, and they're very classic masculine versus feminine type words. So it just those are at the extreme, but it shows that women, if we're talking women versus men, we have very different vocabularies, but it goes even like when you think ethnically, you think like you would think across, like people have different vocabulary for everything. And if AI is looking at words all the time, then yes, there's bias and it puts you at a disadvantage. So I would recommend that audience-driven narrative is like the key strategy to use. Get really deep into what that world looks for. And gosh, I would never use that word because it sounds like I'm bragging, but you better use that word because that's what the other people are using. And especially, for women or certain other groups, we are predisposed in general, making generalizations, to maybe not be so confident because we're worried about societal backlash. Again, part of the reason why I started this business, because sometimes you need a third party to be singing your praises for you. But I think you need to kind of overcome that, start using those words that the audience that holds all the power, start using those words, and you have to pull away
Get
from that
visible.
bragging. Yeah.
Someone here, Samantha, is this why I receive emails from LinkedIn with jobs that match your profile? We always get these. There was another question about catfishing. Are these real? Should I be clicking on these? I have a tendency to leave them, put them away, but like just not even look at them.
Yeah.
Should we be opening them? You were saying that we need to be clicking to be seen that we're fast on the, tu sais, vite sur le piton.
Yeah.
What's
Okay. So for in-mail, so it's not just any message, but in-mail specific messages, which is how recruiters usually reach out to you on the platform. So not on your email, although you might get the forward of it. But I'm saying once you log into LinkedIn, you get in the platform, the in-mails. I have no idea if it's a catfish opportunity.
is that a message? In-mail? Is that
In-mail,
a
yeah, in your
message?
personal message. If you
Okay.
get a regular message from a connection, it just shows up as a regular message. If you get it from a recruiter or somebody that's really out of your network, oftentimes they have to use a token to get access to you.
Mm.
And there's usually a gold label, I believe, that says in-mail. Those are the money makers, right? So that's the one that you not necessarily need to pursue the opportunity, because I have it could be somebody using tokens to catfish you. But there in the platform, it is probably in your best interest to respond, no, thank you, or I'll look
Okay.
at this. Whether you pursue that conversation or not, I don't think from my hypotheses, it doesn't matter. It's more about the response rate is really what they're hyping up in this tool. So that's one part of it. The other piece, I love that question. We've probably been getting more of these emails more recently of like, you'd be a great fit for XYZ. Whether they're real jobs or not, I can't tell. And that's a big problem that LinkedIn's trying to figure out. Also on the recruiting side, like they're trying to minimize dupes and fakes and catfishing on the recruiting side. But I think it's interesting because it will teach you, look at what it's saying, because it will teach you about how AI is reading your profile. So if you're, a director of performance marketing and you're getting recommendations for general manager of a restaurant, and you're like, well, why am I a good fit for a GM of a restaurant location when I'm a director of performance marketing? So I think those are, okay, there could be just something going haywire with AI. You never know. But in general, if you're getting that feeling of like none of these jobs are relevant, it's a good hint at how to reassess your profile. And when you are on the search side of job search for LinkedIn, depending on, I believe if you have premium, not maybe everyone gets this, but it does tell you how much of a fit you are for many of these jobs you're clicking on.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like an AI chat going, tell me how I'd be even a better fit. I just because I'm curious about this world, I keep clicking and saying, oh, it's telling me a lot about my profile. So I would go through that and just use it more as research for you about how it's reading who you are and packaging you.
We do have to end. I am going to ask you one more question from Heather. How do we stand a chance as a recent graduate with little or no direct job experience in our field?
Yeah, it's tough. I think using volunteer experience or unpaid work experience, if you're doing a job and you're not lying about it, whether you're paid or unpaid, to me, that's a skill you're building. It's work you're doing. So it's up to you where you put in the volunteer category and the work category. Like I would be a little loosey-goosey with that because if it's an actual job you're doing, work you're doing, whether it's part of a club, whether it's part of it, put it in your work experience and put the skills there. And then if you're lacking even in that perspective, that's where content comes in. Start becoming an expert. Start posting. You want to get into CPG, you want to get into tech, start saying, "Oh, I saw this article. This is what I think about this article." Start posting about it because you're teaching the algorithm. If you want to get into AI, for example, I'm talking about AI every day of the week. So you're kind of, how to train your dragon, how to
Yeah.
train your algorithm of like understanding who you are. I would recommend that.
Perfect, perfect. There are so many other great questions, and I think I'm going to put some of them in the LinkedIn and tag you, Crystal, so because
Oh,
there are
yes,
some of
please.
the easy way maybe we could have a continue this chat in the LinkedIn group. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your stories
Thank
and your
you.
expertise with us today. We could talk, I think, another couple of hours. For those of you who'd like to connect with Crystal, Erin is going to put her contact info in the chat. Please do reach out, do capture this QR code that's on the screen at the moment and reach out to Crystal. I think having an expert help us definitely if we're looking for work and looking to get a higher job. I think having that expertise, look at our profile, would make all the difference. I invite you all to join our LinkedIn group. That's also going to be in the chat. We can continue this discussion. You can see other replays of other webinars that we have. I highlight grads and what they're doing. It's a great place. Please come and join me there. We also raise funds for the Women Who Lead Student Bursary. If you've enjoyed our alumni programming and wish to donate to the bursary, the link is also in the chat. And we have two other events I wanted to highlight that I think you will all enjoy. Erin is actually hosting one next week, and it is called Teamwork for Better Collaboration. She's going to put that in the chat as well. It's a webinar with one of our professors from JMSB. Please join us there, learn all about how to make your teams run smoothly. And the John Meaners Center for Real Estate is hosting next week, or actually this week, excuse me, Women Shaping the Future of Real Estate. So if you are into real estate and want to know more, there's two great guests there. That link is also in the chat. So thank you so much. I know we've gone over 2 minutes, but I really appreciate everyone hopping on every month and all of these events that we have. And we've got lots more to come in 2026. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you so
I
much.
look forward to working with you again.
Me too.
Okay. Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.